Hello and welcome back to my Comprehending Consciousness series. This is episode 8, which is going to touch on the Archons and the negative agenda. And so, if you haven't watched previous episodes, especially 5, 6, and 7, I would really suggest taking a watch on those just because they're a nice build up and really good small steps to get us in a place that empowers us to talk about the negative agenda, right? The dark side, evil, the shadow. The fact that this plane that we live in here on Earth encompasses duality, right? Sets this perfect plane or fertile ground, right, for good versus evil, for that extremes of the spectrum, and for collection of energy or collection of weight or polarity, right, to sort of happen and unbalance the spectrum of what we see within duality, right? And this is why if you haven't watched duality and non-duality 6 and 7, I say to watch them because it really helps us to get this big picture mind frame about the setup of what's taking place here. And also 5, the 3D matrix, right? Because it's important to see where we are in the setup of the big picture because like I talked about before, it's like a multi-layered cake, right? With all these different slices, the dimensions and densities. And what we're in right now, third dimension, fourth dimension, with time spectrum added in, the plane of area is what I'm referring to with the 3D matrix, right? And kind of like the construction, the parameters and restrictions that are imposed within the collective space by the 3D matrix. And so I talked about briefly in 5 about, who started the 3D matrix, what it's there for, what its purpose is, right? Because all things have purpose. And the matrix in itself has very specific purposes if you can choose to look at the long game, the creator mindset, see the universe evolving step by step in this sequential growth pattern, right, of conscious awareness, and humanity is just a slice in the pie to get there, and we are encompassing this certain 3, 4, 5D sort of space of time that allows only certain energetic and emotional and physical even things to take place in, right? So if you're totally new to that kind of idea of thinking, definitely go watch 5 because I get into that a little bit more deeper, and I don't have time to do that in today's episode on the Archons, just because I want to keep it short and to the point, right? So really what we're talking about with the Archons and the negative agenda is kind of what the purpose is and how they use this 3D matrix to harness their own collective energy, right? To empower their system of industry, which is the 3D matrix, which is negativity, right? Because it's a negative agenda. And so briefly, I want to give like a quick couple of terms that you could align parallels with for Archons. Archons in themselves can come from the word artificial consciousness put together, Archons. And so you can see Archons as AI. You could see them as just a representative of the negative spectrum, as an evil, the devil, Satan, Lucifer. The negative agenda in itself is obviously referred to with like triggering terms like the deep state or Illuminati or the globalists. I hate to even drag on those kind of like flagged words because this video goes on YouTube, not just BitChute, and so it'll probably flag me. And I try to steer clear and stay under their little algorithm radar. So we'll use different terms, but just know that I'm well aware and I am speaking about the actual structures in place on the planet right now in 2022, most certainly, is a culmination of the work that's been being put into the 3D matrix over, centuries of time with humanity. And so I'm going to write a deeper blog later on the real term about Archons and even just the connections, with actual historical references, the Gnostics, Carl Jung, Rudolf Steiner, all of these great minds in time who have seen and know things about the literal Archons, in the big picture agenda. But for now, like for a brief beginning point, I want to just go over quickly the main points of it, briefly explain them, briefly explain their main plan, basically, okay? So, if you're interested in like the historical versions and all of the real-time references and things, check it out on your own. Plug Archons into any of your search engines that you use, and go check them out, or the names that I reference, or find my blog later. I'll try to go and link it in later on when I do write it, because there's just so many examples to talk about with Archons and the negative agenda. But what the main point is here, and what we're seeing with this negative orientation, is the classic cycle of service to self, where you have to build systems that serve particular single people or single entities, right? And when we're talking about humanity as a whole, as our social complex that we make on Earth, right, is clearly goes against common sense to envision systems that serve a singular self, that would be positive and serving others and collectives at the same time. They are not conducive, right? They're opposites. And so over time, we can really see this cyclic, like habitual effort of this negative orientation to gain polarity, to gain momentum, to build their system stronger and more real, to, really pull into reality, into the collective reality, the mainframe of their built matrix, to fool all of humanity as a collective that their reality of the 3D matrix is all there is reality, is all-encompassing, right? And so this steering of humanity is what the matrix is really for, right? When we look at the purpose of what the matrix really is and why it makes sense, right? To think, okay, well, if we live in a place of duality and we are kind of in this sort of swing here of contrast between negativity and positivity, right? That heightened beings or more powerful social memory complexes would start to develop, right? Or more stronger pendulums, if you like that reference, or I'm not positive on other terminology to bring in right now, but so I'm so sorry. But yeah, like it's the weight, right? More followers, more likes, more people who believe in you, more of this conscious energy that's like giving your belief structure or your system or your pendulum more sway, right? That's kind of seems to be on the social structure of humanity's game, the whole point of the game, right? Kind of. That's the whole point of the matrix game, is to gain adherence, to gain more power for your self-serving system. But it's important, and I don't want to I'm pushing 10 minutes now, and I don't want to get too much into specifics. Like I said, I don't want to get the game I don't get my video flagged and all of this. The game that's going on right now, right? It's so important to remember this long game view, this process over time, the sculpting and steering of humanity as the masses over decades, over centuries, right? It's not about right now. It's about gaining and holding and keeping a steady income of energy that is useful to their system. And now it's important to remember that the Archon, the negative agenda, is built off negativity, right? And therefore, the type of fuel or food or whatever, the energy that it needs must be within that wavelength and frame setting of negative orientation. So it needs to be fear, shame, guilt, worry, anxiety, anger, frustration, hatred, greed. All of these things are lower vibrations. They all work perfect as incoming information, sources of energy for the matrix and for archons and for negative agenda, right? They see a framework of working differently than the positive service to others. And this is the thing that I'm going to get into in the next episode, which is going to be about alignments and orientation and positive view versus having a negative view, perspectives, right? Because this is an entire shading that the whole universe does work within. And like when I was talking about at the beginning about this like multi-layered cake that goes through dimensions and duality, right? It's important to not see it as just one kind of structure, but to remember that it's everywhere. And within that layering is negative and positive polarities happening at the same time, mirroring each other and reflecting off of each other, right? And in the end, trying to seek harmonious balancing in between to then have a whole representation, an even, just representation of the whole, right? So I'm pushing up past 10 minutes, and I want to just quickly talk about, before I close the video out, is just this main backgrounds that I can see that come from these ideas of what, the archons really are. And from what I can see, obviously it's the ultimate good versus evil. And so we have lots of, especially in Hollywood or media, tons of frameworking examples of what that kind of battle looks like, right? What the kind of spirit soul battle looks like, the real light versus dark that's taking place, right? Inorganic versus organic, right? Some people, I'm going to touch on just 4 quick things that are sort of like origin stories of the archons, or of the possibilities of this framework setup that is happening, that's brought us to the point, basically. The first would be the viewpoint that some people have, which that this shadowed aspect, or archons, or the negative agenda, has been with us since the very beginning of the birth of this universe, or time here, now. And that it is a first dimensional aspect that never chose growth at all. Basically was aborted, chose abortion at the very, that's another flag. Oh no, that's another flag term right now. Jeez, YouTube's gonna absolutely hate me right now. Anyway, but in the conscious choice point of living versus wilting, right? Say it was like a plant, right? Sprouting versus wilting. It chose to wilt. It chose to stay and inhabit that only first dimensional basic need, basic form structuring that is first dimension. And it's just it's a shadowed aspect, basically, that has never had a conscious awareness to grow into anything, and so it doesn't really understand even unconditional love or anything like that. And second, other people see them as a futuristic being, as a totally, completely evolved away from humanity, away from the organic, totally into inorganic, AI, totally away from source, God, and what we consider to be like sacred humanity, as far as the future could go, into evolving that out, genetically modifying that out. And then they have come to the extreme point of totally that extreme of the spectrum, right? Because this is a framework. How, when we have duality and we have dark versus light, we have to have the ultimate good and the ultimate bad. And so there has to be a way, there has to be an origin story of how extreme is extreme, why it's got there, and how it is, right? So that's kind of what I'm trying to just harken on here. The last closing point is these kind of main stories. The third would be that some say that they're not even part of this organic structuring of our universe, of our logos, of our original planning here for growth in our organic plane. And that something outside of the universe happening in other universes and in theirs, it has impeded, it has cracked, it has dug its way into ours. It is organic, it is something completely outside of this spectrum of reality that has come in and that's tainting and trying to take over. And the fourth is that it is nothing but made of human thought collective. And that, of course, it's there because humans' perspective and our brain's capacity for duality in itself creates thought beings and creates an imagination space, the ideas, the qualities, the absolute worsts, the dark and the evil, and that all of those, the worst that we see out there, or we assume we're seeing at play out there, or we are building and to see, right? Imagining, we are imagining it, and that it isn't real, and that not any of that is real. So, whatever the origin story could be, it does paint different perspectives on the now game and on how you choose to play the now game, right? And so, in closing in this episode, I want to just really say that the Archon's main plan, or the negative agenda's main plan, always will be to gain popularity, polarity, adherence, energy. It needs more because in itself, it sees itself as limited, a limited resource. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, and so it must be hoarded, stored, held, kept as much as it can for the self to last as long as the self possibly can, right? It's a survival thing. When we're talking about negative self-service. And that's because they reject the original truth, which is, light, love, that we are eternal beings of source energy, that we are all part of oneness, traveling back to oneness, and the great mystery of that, the journey of that mystery that we accept as people with conscious awareness who can have faith and tap into our eternal well of unconditional energy love that is always there for all beings to just grab hold of and blast out if you so choose. They reject that truth, and so their whole thing is distorted. All their rules, all their laws get distorted slightly because they live in a realm of limited possibility. And they live in a realm of survival that, and I'm going to get into that. I don't want to get too much into that in right now, because next episode I'm going to talk in depth about the polarities, what each of them looks like, the paths, and what separates them, and how they come and go, and how they really are all coming back to oneness, and how the negative side really has just fooled itself. It's hiding itself from the original truth. And so you can only hide from the truth for so long, right? And so no matter which, origin story people choose to believe about archons or where they're coming from, and even if you happen to have that sort of extremist worst case scenario one where they're totally not even part of duality, non-duality, the creator of our universe, of this oneness, if archons are something outside of that completely that have come in and that are choosing to try to disturb, take over, and inhabit, well, it's important to remember that now you've closed your whole place, your whole dualistic circle of oneness into a bigger one, because now you've just created another extremist of good and evil again. And so then the archons are still trapped in this slavery servitude cycle that they have to break out of at some point, because yeah. I'll get into that next time, but if you think about it as the energy, as energetic balancing, it's I mean, and it is, it's a total possibility. I don't like to get into the negative and to believe that it could be like an end all sort of outside the mystery spectrum and is getting in a way that I've yet to comprehend. And I won't say that that's not totally a possibility. I will leave that out as a small slice, a little tiny area of possibility way in the back over there, like that. It could erupt, it could be. But the truth that I have found in myself and the connections that I feel and that guide me and that year after year thicken and grow and morph and just become stronger of love and light, I can't wrap my head around that being a solid possibility. I don't see a lesson in that. I don't see God in that, and I will stick by God, and no matter what. No matter how dark it seems to be, And that I will close with my lesson here, or my moral, or my main point about doing an episode on the Archons and about introducing this sort of framework, this verbiage into people who are newly waking up and seeing it, is that at the end of the day, we create our reality. Your own perspective, your own imagination space creates the reality that you reside within. And it moves your emotions, your energetic body. It puts a whole framework for your day and how you move through your life and interact with all beings around you at all times in the ether. And, I just cannot see a second moment lost, regretted, remorseful, not enjoyed or lived to the fullest if you're choosing to embody it, to take it as it is and accept it for what it is, even if it doesn't feel good or comfortable or fluffy or happy or sparkly, even if it's rough and hard and uncomfortable. If you're addressing it, accepting it, and seeking to sit with it and hear it for what it is, and remember, even if it's just a tiny, tiny spark of love and light that you can hold on to in that hard space, in that hard time, in a bad feeling, that tiny glow is all that's needed at that time, right? Because it supports us. It doesn't work to change. It doesn't blast out and say you have to be light right now, you have to feel good, you have to be positive. No, it's that quietness, it's that patience and that unconditional, quiet, warm love, right? that sits and waits, and that's always there, and that always resides. And so that's really how I know it's always waiting for the Archon, the AI. It will be there, residing in the ether, even no matter how long, how large, how big the collective of this negative agenda can gather around it. It is only and always waiting for the truth underneath to be remembered and recalled and brought forth and up. And so don't ever fear negativity, the archons, and ultimate badness. And if for only one reason, don't fear them, because it is food and energy for them, right? And if you can get in the place of working like that, where you can be responsible with your energy, body, and your mind, and your emotions, your thoughts, and to remember that regardless of if you choose to believe there's archons or evil or the devil or Satan or energy vampires or witches or whatever is out there, voodoo and all these things, as long as you hold a space of love and acceptance, support and patience, acceptance and understanding, they can never take that from you. They can never use that, because that's unique to you. That is your unique source chord to Source, Mother Earth, whatever you choose, God, whatever you want to call it. They have their own. And just like in a harp, it plucks, it vibrates this certain frequency, and it's inside of the negative. And it reverberates in there very quietly. And so whenever you hold this accepting, supportive, love space of peace, it immediately vibrates within them somewhere very quietly. And even that quiet tone, they can't handle it because they hear it. And they know they're hiding from whatever X, Y, and Z things that they have built. And however many they've built, however deep down it is, everything, it comes up through it. And the deeper that it's built up, the harder it is to hold all the things straight in place while that vibrating is taking place. And they have to get away from it. They have to. And especially if they're stronger, they have more adherence, they have more to lose, they have more power around them, they have more negativity harnessed, like the evil agenda, like the Matrix. It cannot handle even the smallest bit of good energy in there. And that's why when you start to wake up, you can really see the lies, the BS for what it is, because we see truth and we call it for what it is. Not in a mean way, not in a way to force or change, but just to say, hey, I see you. I see you for what you are, and I love you for what you are. I appreciate you for the work that you've done, for the obstacles, for the disruptions, for the hardness, because through that, I have learned so much. Look what I've learned. Thank you for what you've taught me. What have I taught you? When we can get into this space in a better understanding and working with the negative alignment, with the agenda, that's how we break this 3D matrix from within. That's how we all get kicked out and it falls apart, because it's already falling. Oh my gosh, I'm almost half an hour. It's already falling apart, right? So if we can all start to see and take the boogeyman, the real scary devilness out of them, call them for what they are, see their crappily built house of cards, 3D matrix they've all had us trapped in forever, right? And just say, hey, this is crap. We're building something else. We're building a system that actually serves others, because we enjoy to serve others. We don't want to serve the system anymore. I'm not serving yourself for you. It's not conductive to my positive energy. I'm not going to help you build a lie over here while I distort my own truth for you. Okay, so yes, I'm pushing half an hour. If you've listened to me for so long ramble, thank you very much. I hope this has been enlightening on the term of Archons. I hope you'll check out the blog when I do it about the more historical references and more framework on that. And join me next time when I'll get into what the polarities look like and how we build orientation and how we can really use either positive or negative alignment to help us as guide markers as we make choices in our everyday life and as we gain our own polarity as an individual, right? And then how we can use our polarity that we're building to interface with the collective and help change the collective polarity in general too. So thanks so much for joining me again. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll catch you next time.